So we now live in a technological age. Despite our sympathies or antipathies, more likely, towards modern life, there is a cosmic purpose for this phase in our human evolution. As technology evolves, so will our interactions with it. In the past, a hammer was just a tool. Can you say that about a smartphone today? Steiner foresaw that technological devices would, by today, have become a kind of companion. They form a relationship that affects us as social beings. This new relationship is of utmost significance, for, as Aleodor will say, it is one of both creator and creation. In today's webinar, Aleodor Lazarescu asks, how is this changing landscape? In it, how do we engage with our senses? And yes, we mean with all 12 senses. 100 years ago, everything sensory around us appealed to our intellect. Today, with earplugs and smartphones and AI, do we fully experience the outside world anymore? What kind of relationship do we now have with our 5 and with our 12 senses? According to the saying, use it or lose it, we need to ask today, are we in danger of losing some perceptivity? Aleodor lives in Bucharest, Romania. His original profession was as an engineer, but he was called to give this up for anthroposophical work in his city, including its Waldorf school and its Waldorf preschool teacher training course, as well as a publishing business where he doubles as a translator. Aleodor has hosted a local study group on technology for several years. This led him to discover MysTech and subsequently to participate in MysTech study groups. Through this, Aleodor and I have become friends, and then close friends after he invited me to extend my 2024 UK speaking tour with a stopover in Bucharest, where we got to physically meet. So, Aleodor, I'm delighted to have you here today, and I turn this over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for this wonderful introduction. You made me take a trip down memory lane, and I'm thinking about last year and our work together here in Bucharest, and I do hope for a future meeting as we have tried and strived towards it. The sensory world, it's very big, very overwhelming in a sense. And before we start talking about the senses, I would like to think about our world now and how do we relate to it, maybe from a soul point of view. So I would like to start with a verse. The stars spoke once to man. It is world destiny that they are silent now. To be aware of the silence can become pain for earthly man. But in the deepening silence, there grows and ripens what man speaks to the stars. It is very interesting to see, as we go forward, that beforehand, the world talked to us directly, but now it is more silenced. And we have to do the work. We have to start speaking to the world so we can understand more of it and we can understand ourselves. I would like to start by offering everybody my appreciation for being here today and to wish delayed Easter greetings for everybody. I would also like to say that English is not my native language and to bear with me with the occasional mistakes of pronunciation or delay in finding the right words. As Andrew mentioned, I was a Waldorf student. So the 12 senses are an important topic in my world, and I would dare say in our world that is digitalizing more and more, and in which socialization tends to become more and more standardized, because this is a problem that we rarely think about. Our senses interact with more standardized and more standardized inputs. This standardization topic is one that I find very important, and I do encourage you to have further discussion on it after the presentation, or maybe in study groups or further meetings. What I find very interesting is that the 12 senses do not only affect us on a soul level or maybe on an artistic level, but they do affect us, and especially children, if we look upon it, very profoundly in their thinking and in their skills that relate to natural sciences and mathematics. Besides working in the Waldorf training course here in Bucharest and my work in the anthroposophical world, I do give private tutoring in mathematics to children. And this gives me a unique perspective to work with children from different backgrounds and schools here in Bucharest. Not Waldorf schools, but all type of schools. And what I'm finding is quite alarming in the fact that the appreciation and the thinking of children is developing and modifying in an alarming pace. And I'm not talking about differences of generation between myself and children who are now 12, 13, or 14 years old, but I'm talking about differences between children who are now 14 years old and children who are now 10 years old. So a 4-year difference. Their rational thinking is affected by what I think is lack of development and of training of their senses. What I can give as an example from my life about this is when I was in college, by going in each year, I had more and more standardized tests that were in a grid answer pattern. And what happened to myself was that by learning in a way that could answer to these grids, I started to just get the input in myself for a limited period of time, answering the questions in a perfect way, and afterwards just forgetting it. And when I talked with my college professor back then, and I asked them, why is this happening? Why are you changing your exams from written exams to grid exams? And the answer was efficiency. And I would like to propose a question for you. What is the difference between efficiency and effectiveness? Because we live in a world where efficiency is strived towards, but most of the time effectiveness is forgotten. Maybe we'll come back to this topic further along the way. A presentation on the 12 senses was given by Rudolf Steiner in Dornach on the 8th of August 1920, and it gives a glimpse into the way our senses relate to our inside world and also to the outside world through our soul forces. As we go further into this presentation, we will go more into depth. And what I would like to point out is that we are not as aware as we should in regards to how our senses work together with our soul and with our thinking, and we take them for granted. And this, I think, will become a problem as we go further along the way. We live in an interesting time. In a way, we are exteriorly more connected. Outside, we are connected more and more through the internet. There are people all over the world now hearing me. But it is interesting to see at the same time that we look more and more towards ourselves in this all and ever connecting world. If we see these senses, we can see that some of them are related more to our bodily um, aspect, like the life sense, the sense of movement, or the sense of balance, and the sense of touch. And some tend to become more related to the outside world, like the sense of smell, or the sense of taste, the sense of sight, and the sense of warmth. If we think about the more spiritual aspect, which has less materiality, we get to the sense of hearing, the word sense. For example, what you are doing right now. You are hearing me, and you're not only hearing code that I am speaking, but you are trying to get a glimpse of what I am trying and striving to give, to offer to you. Then we come to the sense of thought and to the sense of ego, or the sense of I. These are clearly relating to something that has almost no material aspect. But as these senses interact, Rudolf Steiner tells us that some of the soul aspects and of the spiritual aspects tend to get more or less materiality when they work together. And it is very interesting here to see that as we go towards the senses of our body, and he in this lecture he talks about the mystics of old that were going and striving towards themselves through their senses, you actually come back to the outside world because they again relate to the other senses. It is not easy to think of them separately as we think now. But we said the 12 senses and their relation with our time. What is our time? When are we in the development of time? Where are we in Earth evolution? And here it is a very important aspect to make a difference between epochs and cultural ages. We are currently living in the 5th cultural age. You can see it here on the bottom right. It is the 5th current post-Atlantean cultural age. So we had the previous Atlantean epoch, we have our current post-Atlantean epoch, and then there will be a sixth epoch. Each of these epochs has 7 cultural ages. And I will remind you of the first Proto-Indian cultural age, when we got a glimpse of our materiality and we still longed for the spiritual. Then we can see the Proto-Persian cultural age, when we started to get more into our physical bodies and we strived to work earth. We started to work what is the material outside of us. We started to understand the laws that governed the exterior world, the outside world. Afterwards, we come to the Egypto-Chaldean cultural age. This is a very interesting age because, as you see, I did not make this image like this just for the sake of it, because in this epoch, the Egypto-Chaldean cultural age, we have a reflection of it in our cultural age. How do we see that? If you think about the Egyptians, we saw that they had a very material approach and a very powerful longing to keep their bodies well preserved. They put an emphasis on taking care of the body after death. And if we think now, We are striving to keep our consciousness and move it in other bodies. We have this desire to take care of our physical bodies, to carry them forward. We put a great emphasis on it. And we can see here a reflection of this age. After the Egyptian age, we have the Greco-Roman cultural age, where there is a turning point with the mystery of Golgotha, where everything changed. We stopped going towards materiality and we started going back towards the spiritual. And we have this wonderful image that Christ resurrected and repaired our physical body. We have the opportunity now to spiritualize matter. But how does this relate to our fifth post-Atlantean cultural age? Because we live in a time of technology and intellectualism. And I think most of us can agree that in the previous cultural ages, technology was not always viewed under the utilitarian umbrella with which we view it now and with which we develop it now. We today make use of everything around us for our everyday comfort. And by our action, we actually destroy what is outside, and we obtain with what we have destroyed our objects, which we say we construct according to natural laws. But these natural laws are only here because in many times we do not understand how everything works, and we postulate different theories that they work like this, and then we go forward with our construction and our building. So the laws of nature that we say are of nature are actually of ourselves that we put upon the outside world. But why can we do this? Because we live in a time when we can experience freedom. And we have to go through this stage so we can find those forces in ourselves so we can become creators. And I will only say about the Slavic and the American cultural age that will come towards the sixth and the end of our post-Atlantean epoch, that they will bring new spirituality to our bodies, to our thinking, to our feeling, and to our willing, and that at the end of it, we will have to have spiritualized all matter. But we come back to our fifth post-Atlantean cultural age. And we see here technology, and we think about the Industrial Revolution. In industry, we have mechanical production. And in machine tools, we have machines that were first driven manually. And if we look back towards the Renaissance, for example, we can find that people had more pleasure in thinking. They had more pleasure in thinking well-developed, rational thoughts. As we come towards our time and we go forward, we see that it is harder and harder to really give frame and space to our thoughts. They seem to lack robustness. They are flimsy and they are ephemeral. They come and they go. And our machines do not really help us much in this regard. It becomes harder and harder for human beings to not lose themselves in technology. We can see from the start of the Industrial Revolution that we developed mighty machines that brought comfort and, again, efficiency to our lives. And we can see that industry appeals more to our thinking because we have to think of the processes. Industry, our processes, they are thinking that is put into action. And when we think about machines, yes, they do our work. So they relate and appeal more to our willing. But we do see a clear lack here. We don't have anywhere the feeling aspect of our being. And the question rises here because this, as you can see, this image is not yet finished. Where does AI stand in all of this? Is it only thinking processes, or is there also a willing process there? As we go forward, we will address this question. How do we relate to our time? We think that we relate through our perception to the outside world, through our body. But how do we experience our times now? Where does art stand? How about our work? And I would ask the question towards you. Is the digital world truly perceivable only through our physical senses? What is this digital world that we more and more immerse ourselves, especially with the use of AI now? It does seem to relate to our thinking, isn't it? But how does digital technology work? Everybody knows about programming. Everybody heard about someone working in IT and making maybe a lot of money, or maybe doing sites or other aspects related to computer technology. But what is programming? I do hope that the word programming is nothing new to anyone here. So what is it? It is code. It is written code. But let's think a bit about what is code. What are the lines of code? They are instructions. We tell a computer what to do. But what are instructions? If we think about it, what are instructions that we give towards the computer? Instructions seem to appeal to our thinking. They seem to appeal to our thoughts. Are they not human thoughts that are encased in a rigid structure? So we can find in this approach the fact that computers interact with both programmers and users with our thinking. But nobody thinks in lines of code. Our thinking is deeply different of how a computer thinks. We do not have instructions in our head that tell us what to do. Or do we start to have something like this? But how does technology appeal to our willing? Because in the previous slide, we talked about willing. And here, to understand how a computer reacts and how it interacts with willing, and if willing does appear in computers, I'll give you an example that relates more to a question. So that's why I will ask you. Imagine you're back at school, maybe in the 8th or 9th grade, and you get an assignment from your school to write maybe 5 or 10 pages of lines of code, to write them, to make a program for a computer and to write those lines of code. You would find it extremely boring, wouldn't it? You'd have to write lines of words over and over again. It would take a tremendous amount of willpower from a child and even an adult to do it for hours on end. But think of computers. They do this compiling of lines of code by the millions every day, in every moment. They do it perpetually. So in a way, their willing is much more developed than ours at this stage. So in our relation to technology, as we can see maybe in the image that I have put here, we are going more and more towards computers with our thinking and our willing, where a computer can overpower us. And we tend to get from the outside world to a confined little space in the physical realm, but a totally unsensory reality in the computer realm, and we will address this further along the way. But what about art? How do we perceive art today? Is it different? Is it not? Do we have the art? Do we do the art to counterbalance this thinking and this willing? Do we have a middle way? Can we have a balance between them? I do think eurythmy is a great instrument and a great opportunity for us as human beings of today to balance ourselves, because it makes us aware of both our body and the outside world. And if we think about it more and more, it brings in relation more and more and most of our senses, because we have to relate to words, we have to relate to music, we have to relate to colors, to movement. So as we go further and further and we understand art and eurythmy, we see that there is a deep need for human beings today to balance the thinking and the willing of computers by perceiving. And another question arises: what do we bring into the world? Do we want to bring something that relates to ourselves, or only to our thinking and our willing? And obviously, when we use computers now as users and not as programmers, we tend to think that we use computers. But isn't the computer shaping us? Isn't the computer shaping our thinking? Isn't the computer shaping our willing? Because we tend to do what the computer needs to do, because deep down we know its limits. And we change ourselves so we can interact with it more. In relation to these questions, and how do we relate to our time, I would like to bring upon ourselves the principles of Waldorf education. Do we find goodness, beauty, and truth in art anymore? Do we find them in what we create? Do we still relate to them with our senses? When we see something beautiful, how do we relate to it? Do we give the time to our senses to perceive it? Do we give time to our senses to perceive the truth or the goodness in something? As we go further and further into our relation to our time and how do we create, we are very proud of the fact that we created our society and our technology, aren't we? But how do we do this? At a superficial level, we see that this thing happens in few stages, and they are taking place in the development of modern technology. The first stage, as I said previously, is that we are doing work in destroying the interrelationships that are already in nature. So we work in what is given to us by nature and from the hierarchies, yes, the form, and we destroy it. We take it to the smallest possible aspect of it. And an easy example is a query. We go there, we use explosives, or in the previous times we used all sort of tools, yes? And we take the stone, and further along the way, we smash it, we make it smaller and smaller, we refine it, yes? Either coarser or finer, depending on what we need. And in the second stage, we take what has been extracted from nature and we assemble it in the form of a machine according to the laws that in our current knowledge are the laws of nature. And I know this will seem as maybe a fun example, but the easiest thing to think about when we take raw material of stone is making cinder blocks or counterweights for elevators. As you know, elevators have to go fast up and down. And we take stones, we make them small, we use them with cement and make cinder blocks that are then used as counterweights in elevators. We take something that is already made and then we shape it in the way we want it. But what is the key aspect of this? We make it small and then we assemble it in parts and we put together things like Lego. But the outside world, nature, does not shape things as that, like that. It shapes it from the whole. It has an archetype and it has the whole being, and then it works on the details. And it is very interesting for me as a trainer in the course and also as a Waldorf student to see adults now working with clay. If you see an adult now in the course that works with clay, they tend, when you give them an assignment to do something, they tend to take parts of the clay, make the forms that they need, and then assemble it. But former Waldorf students, they work from the whole being of the clay. They work from the whole and give it form. And it is a different aspect in our thinking, because when we think, we do not tend to take little parts and put them together. Or maybe this is the former way of thinking. But as we go further, we have thoughts that tend to be image-like. They tend to have a wholeness to it. As we go into technology and we link to it more and more, we are going towards this Lego pattern that is not in accordance to our own being. When we are, let's say, made, we are not made from parts. We start as a whole organism that develops, and then we get out into the world. So how do we relate to our being? As human beings, we have incarnated on Earth today, and we have more than just the physical body. We have also a body that keeps things moving, the etheric. We have a body that works with our impression and that gives us desires. This works with sympathy and antipathy, as Andrew said in the beginning. And we have the I, the ego, which penetrates and keeps all these bodies working as a whole. I'm sure everybody knows to a degree about these bodies, so I would like to go forward more towards the forces that we use in everyday life. Our soul forces, these three being thinking, feeling, and willing. For most of us, we are aware, or maybe we are aware, we know that we are awake most in our thinking, and we use our thinking to the fullest extent. In our feeling, Rudolf Steiner tells us that we are more in a dreaming state. And in our willing, he says that we are totally asleep. And the fact that we are asleep in our willing is a very good thing. And I will give you an example in just a few minutes. But I would like to point something important. I would like for you to remember or to imagine a small child, maybe an infant. How is he acting into the world? How is his physical body? Is he active? Is he moving? If we think about a small child, we can see that he takes everything and puts it in its mouth. He moves his body all the time. And if we ever, maybe you have tried to pick up a small baby or try to get something out of his hand, you can see that they have a tremendous force. It is clear that small children, at least until the age of the changing of dentition, they are the most active in the sphere of willing, much more than ourselves. And maybe we can think that this is not true, but think of a small child that learns how to stand upright. How many times does a small child fall and then get up back again? And think of the last time you had an insuccess. You had some problems. You made a mistake, and then you tried to do it better, and you made a mistake again, and then again, and then again. how hard was it for you to try and do things again and again and again and again? We can see that the child lives much more in the sphere of willing than we. So why do we try and make toys and play for children from our thinking? Because our thinking is quite different than the ones of the child. Our thinking is intellectual. We see images. We rationalize. A child lives in its willing. He perceives the world directly. And if a child is so much in the willing, the question arises, what happens when we bring them in front of a screen? Or what happens when we give them adult made toys? Yes, like plastic toys, or maybe games made in a computer screen for their reactiveness, so they can learn about the world. What happens to them then? I just wanted here to give another image of our being in a painting made in one of a Romanian church, an Orthodox church, by a priest who has departed in the 1990s, our physical world. Just as a small glimpse that we shouldn't think about the physical, etheric, astral, and I in such, I would say, material aspect that we have clearly defined phases and clearly defined tables of it, and the etheric does that, and the physical does that, the astral, and so on. But here it's a picture in which we can see they all interact and they all work together. This is an image of the resurrection of Christ. I hope it brings you joy seeing it, and I think it does relate very well to our time now after Easter. Now, I think it is the time to go into the senses and their relation to our being. Our senses work together as a whole. And this is not only said by Rudolf Steiner or by myself, but about the scientists of our time also came to this conclusion. In his book, John Medina says that the senses work together, and it is the best and the easiest way to use one or more senses, because this helps in both remembrance and active work. In fact, the chapter dedicated to the senses has the next motto: stimulate more of the senses. And if we take it at face value, it ticks the box. If we have more input, we have more information, so we have better responses. He says that our brain takes all of these perceptions and makes them in one coherent experience. But he admits that the brain science of today is only at the beginning of understanding. And the question arises, will they understand the senses? And they are only talking about the 5 physical senses. Will they understand them with only the physical brain doing all the work? This is a question for another time, but it is clear that researchers are trying to understand how our senses work, at least from a physical point of view, and that they see that the physical brain is still a mystery and they cannot understand how it all interacts. Rudolf Steiner tells us about the senses and their relation in the lecture that I said on the 8th of August 1920 that was held in Dornau. Here we have the senses that relate more to the physical, because we will see, as we saw in the first image, that different senses relate more to different aspects of our being. We have the sense of touch, we have the life sense, the sense of movement, and the sense of balance. Further along the presentation, we will talk about each one in detail. As we go forward towards our soul world, we can see we have the sense of smell, the sense of taste, the sense of sight, and the sense of warmth. Further along the way, we have senses that relate more to our spiritual bodies. Here we have the sense of hearing, we have the word sense, the sense of thought, and the ego sense, or the I being sense. When we come to the sense of touch, and it is one of the first that develops in ourselves, I usually think of the child. The small child perceives where he is with his hands and his feet. It helps him perceive the environment. The sense of touch acts together with the other senses so that the child forms an opinion of the world and of its own body. You can see that he takes his hands, he moves them, he touches, he touches himself, and so on. These impressions reach inside the child. To exercise this sense, it is recommended that children go outside and play with items found in nature. Sticks, stones, sand, leaves, everything, so that they can have new experiences of this outside world. In Waldorf kindergartens, children have a variety of materials that they can play with. They use dough to make bread and beeswax to mold. This not only develops perception, but also fine motor skills. They relate with other senses. And here I would ask the questions. What is the difference when we touch something of the outside world? Maybe a tree bark, as in the image, or maybe a metal bar. When we touch it, we have different perceptions of it. It's smooth, it's coarse, it has stood the test of time, and so on. And how do we relate when we touch a smartphone? What do we feel when we touch a smartphone? Is it not a standardized feeling? Do we get anything about what we are seeing, what we are touching? Does it truly relate to other senses? Here we have the life sense. Rudolf Steiner talks about this sense, and I think this sense can help us observe our etheric body. Through this sense, we perceive in our body, we perceive pain. We perceive if we are tired, if we are thirsty, if we are hungry. It is very interesting to see that usually when we relate to our life sense, we relate to something that makes us uncomfortable. We don't relate to it when we are comfortable. Although our body tells us when we are doing good, when we are feeling well, when we are feeling comfortable. So we usually only get the inputs when it hurts. And I don't think this is the way to do it. We should refine this sense more to understand how we relate and how we are feeling comfortable. What is it that brings us comfort? It is a sense through which these sensations manifest. It is also a sense that educates itself. And if you think about the small child again, early in life, a baby cries when it is hungry, and the mother must give him food whenever he needs it. But as we grow and the child grows, we learn to delay these feelings. For example, maybe I'm thirsty now, but I won't take a cup of tea now and drink it in front of you, because that would not be appropriate. So I can delay these feelings for an appropriate time. And we as adults work with this and refine them more and more each day. For those of you who maybe drive, you have all sorts of inputs from your life sense, and you learn to delay them so that you can drive further and find a normal or a perfect spot so you can solve issues. Here we have the sense of movement. And Rudolf Steiner says about this sense the following: we do not perceive our own movement and rest only in relation to the position of external objects in relation to us, but we can perceive internally when we move, how much we have moved, or other aspects related to movement. Starting from the lengthening or shortening, the extension or the contraction of our muscles, or from the configuration of our body. This is perceived through our sense of movement. The young child moves without a goal. Then, as he gets older, he grasps objects with a purpose. Around the age of 1 year, he starts to move by walking. And at 4 or maybe 5 years, he starts to hop on one leg. This means they begin to have control over their bodies and can initiate meaningful movements. And here we can remember, or maybe think, or maybe tomorrow or today, depending on the time of day, because for me it is the time of night and not the time of day right now. When we see a small child, we can see that until they get to a certain age, they more or less run all the time. They do not walk. To walk is a refinement of the sense of movement and of the life sense. We can see in each of the paces of a child's development how the senses get refined towards what we as adults perceive as our senses. Nowadays, unfortunately, children move less and less. They don't walk to school anymore. They are always watched by their parents. A child, thus, cannot feel free in the world. He feels that he is always being observed. We do not give children the opportunity to move enough. And I will give you another example. I remember going to, not to school, but to the kindergarten. And I had to go by the subway. And I remember the whole walk and the whole road towards the kindergarten. It was wonderful that I had the same people who I met, the same trees, the same cars, the same metro stations. But what I remember most vividly sometimes about the road was the fact that on the escalators, I could walk in the opposing movement of the escalator. And I would just walk and walk and walk for minutes at a time until the subway came. This was a movement that relates so much to me that when I go towards the escalators, even now, as an adult, towards those escalators, I don't need to think about them. I just walk on them and know exactly what the dimensions are of both the escalators and the step that I need to make. We have more and more adults today that do not relate correctly to the outside world in terms of dimensions. They cannot observe dimensions because they do not know their own body and their own their own, let's say, muscles, contractions, and movement. Here I chose an image for the sense of balance with an adult, because the sense of balance is totally different from the sense of movement. And I do have another citation. As we penetrate still further inside ourselves, we are confronted with a sense which by now is not commonly given a name, or at least it is not often named, a sense by means of which we distinguish whether we are lying down or standing up, a sense by which we perceive when we stand on both our feet, how we maintain our balance. Children can develop this sense if they are made to walk on logs or jump on one foot from one foot to another, or from one river rock to another. And even the use of bicycles or the monocycle increases awareness of body position. Practicing balance increases self-confidence. Why is it important, maybe, to think, why is it important for children to exercise and refine their senses at an early age? Because I would ask you to think, how hard is it as an adult to learn something new? How hard it is for you to put your thinking aside and just learn something new? Children need to develop certain senses and refine them at certain periods of time because there are different soul forces working with them at that time. And I can give an example for the sense of balance and the sense of movement that I experienced last year when I had an illness related to my sense of balance and my sense of movement. It was about 3 months when I lost both my sense of balance and my sense of movement, and partly a time when I lost a part of my sense of sight. And I still had to work. I still had to do things. How could you do such normal aspects of life when you have such problems with these senses? And I can say that you can counterbalance some of these senses by working with your other senses and your, let's say, thinking, because you have to perceive the outside world more conscious in that moment, and you have to think of every action that you do. So if you want to get a cup of water, you don't just move your hand to get that cup of water because you no longer have the perception through the senses. You have to think each step that you are doing with your thinking to do this. And I must say that although it is a good exercise, it is very, very tiring. And it requires a lot of thinking and a lot of force to do it. It is not something that I think should be developed right now. I think it is more important to be aware of our senses, of all our senses, and work to them, and not put them aside and say, I'll work tomorrow, I'll work in 2 weeks, I'll work in a year. Because if we do that, we condemn ourselves and our children to go through periods of intense work, and that is not needed in our time. Now we can go towards the sense of smell. And here, the nose, it's clear, is the organ that helps us smell. It is an unconscious activity because with each inhalation, the nose perceives the odors around us. With smell, we can like or dislike something into the world. We can say a flower has a pleasant smell, and I have a feeling of sympathy towards it. If someone has a certain odor, not an unpleasant one, but one that is unpleasant for us, we can start and develop an antipathy towards that person. And it is an interesting aspect to this, why the sense of smell has such a powerful input into us. And researchers have found today that the sense of smell has a direct connection to the brain. The other senses, the other four senses in their thinking, have to go through an interface, let's say. They have to go through an interface, and then they are perceived by the brain, and everything is put together, and an image is created, or a perception is created. With the sense of smell, it goes directly to the hypothalamus and makes a reaction. And if you think about people who maybe faint and then come back to, let's say, life, the last thing you lose is the sense of smell, and the first thing that you perceive is smell. And you can have that image that when someone has fainted, people come and put something strong in odor to their nose so they can get back up. And people remember that smell first and then the rest of it. And if we go back towards the evolution, the cosmic evolution as Rudolf Steiner presented it, the smell and then the taste were the first senses, or the first aspects, the first material aspects that started to develop on old Saturn. It is very interesting to think of it, and we take it for granted. Although the sense of smell in examples made by both military and civilian applications gives us the most capacity to remember things. If we have a sense of smell that is connected to a memory, we can more easily remember it. Although it is such a direct sense, it is very interesting that it is difficult to characterize a smell. We have a problem describing it. Most of the time, when we describe it, we use physical elements into the world. For example, it smells like a rose, or it smells like cheese, or like onions. We cannot give it a name. We cannot give smells a name. We can see that the world meets us through smell, and smell is closely related to digestion. If something can be eaten, it will trigger digestion and the appetite to eat will arise. Or if something smells badly, you'll say, I won't eat it. So it has a direct approach. And in relation to our time and to technology, I will ask you to think about it. Can you really take a smell and say, in this part it smells like this, in this part it smells like this? When you smell a rose, what's the smell of the rose? Is it the start? Is it the second part of the odor or the third? The odor is a continuous experience. It cannot be cut in pieces. And I remember when talking about this sense of smell, talking about cinemas that offer you more sensory experiences. I have been to one of these, and the smell that they put in relation to different pictures did not cut the quality, did not cut the quality. They were not of good enough quality. You had it brought into myself the experience that what I was smelling was not in relation to what I was seeing. It actually had the completely opposite effect. I wanted to leave. The experience was no longer genuine. So it is very hard for technology to mimic smell, because mimicking smell means that you need a technology that is continuous. But as we know technology is made by instructions in a rigid structure. Something continuous is not rigid. So I do think in this sense, we will not be able to replicate it with our technology. I will have here another excerpt. By the sense of taste, we perceive the properties of something by the surface of objects. We perceive its properties by the sense of taste. The end of the citation. This sense is related to the sense of smell. When we smell, we create a pre-taste impression. We can also have a pre-impression of whether the food is good to eat or not. Humans perceive 4 tastes: bitter, sweet, salty, and sour. All these tastes arouse human consciousness. Of these 4 tastes, only salt has the role of accentuating other tastes of matter. The other tastes can be sensed individually. And it is clear that taste is related to our will. It relates to our gut. The sweet taste makes us feel good. The sour taste awakens us. But the salty taste also has a strong awakening effect. And I would say the bitter taste reminds us that we can overcome the hardships of life. When something is hard in our life, we tend to want to eat something bitter, and then we go forward. We can see that taste is also used in expressions such as it tastes good or bad, when referring to fashion or the arts. And if we think about smell, something smells fishy around here. So for smell, we also perceive the outside world into an intuition-like aspect. And then we come to the sense of sight, the one that we use right now. We perceive the world through our eyes, and the eye is the sense organ that helps us know the material world as it is. Through the eyes, the world is shown to us as colored or bright or dark. We can say that sight is an active process. The eyes can perceive the external world, but they can also manifest a man's inner experiences. Rudolf Steiner talks about the fact that when we see, it is as though some tentacles come from our eyes within the etheric and sort of touch the object so we can have an experience of it. They are the mirror of our soul. Through the eyes, we can tell whether a person is sad or he's happy. The eyes are an organ of the will. In everyday speech, there are expressions that reminds us of this. I saw nothing. I overlooked this fact. You can see it, and etc. You need willpower to see things clearly and to act. And we can go further towards the sense of warmth. There is a constant exchange of heat between our body and the environment through the process of inspiration and expiration. With the help of our skin receptors, we can feel cold or heat. Cold has the function of contracting. When we feel cold, we contract. When we feel warm, we tense up. We become enthusiastic. On a soul level, we can say that a room or a person is warm in the sense of welcoming, or cold, not welcoming. But I would go further along, and I would not say that the sense of warmth is only has only a caloric aspect to it. It does not have only a temperature aspect to it. We can feel and we can sense warmth in persons, in animals, in the outside world. But all of these senses that we have talked upon until now can be deceived, even the sense of warmth. We get now to the sense of hearing, another sense that you use right now in our presentation, and one of the two, maybe three senses that is used mostly with technology now. And we will go again into another excerpt from Rudolf Steiner. We imagine that you would go even deeper into the corporeality of objects, deeper than was possible through the caloric sense. Not only what penetrates corporality from the outside, but what is the quality of bodies by their very essence. For example, when you hear a metal plate that you strike, then you perceive something of the materiality of that metal plate. Thus, something of the inner being of the metallic structure. Through the sense of hearing, you perceive something that already coexists in interdependence with the inner being of bodies. The organ of sound perception is the ear. Hearing can be educated by exposing the children to natural sounds, to the mother's voice, to birds, to the sounds of nature, to the sounds of instruments such as the lyre or the harp, the pentatonic or the diatonic flute, the wooden xylophone. Nowadays, unfortunately, children hardly hear what we tell them because as we human beings, as adults, we receive too many auditory impressions from the environment, and we have to protect ourselves by not hearing, and the children do the same. The noise in the world overwhelms us, and children are exposed to noise from their very first day of life. TV, radio, cars. Think about how much noise we hear each and every day. I can tell you now, for example, that I am on a third floor in a house where we have our course here in Bucharest. And I am alone in this room, which is quite big, 200 and something square meters. And it is well insulated by both for temperature and sound. But I still hear the cars, and I still hear the tram, and I still hear different picks, pocks, and sort of background noise from electronic devices, from home appliances, and so on. Even LEDs emit a sound right now. So our sense of hearing is constantly under assault, and we need to refine it so we can understand more of the structure that comes to us from other beings. I put a TED talk here, just as an image of a TED talk, just as a sort of fun sort of joke, because we sometimes tend to use the word sense to hear ourselves and not the others. And the sense of speech is related to our awareness of language. It helps us understand when others are speaking, and it is strongly linked to social understanding. Speech, it is clear to us, that allows us to express our inner thoughts and feelings. But when we think of the sense, the word sense, we do not think only about language and code. When you hear me talking, although I am talking through a computer screen, and you are hearing only the pressure of air upon your ear, you do have a feeling of what I am trying to give you, to offer you. You are not only understanding me at the level of code. You don't only understand me at the level of language. You understand more than it. And I dare you to have maybe a few minutes in which you meet someone and you truly stand there and hear them and try to get a sense of what they are saying. Do it actively, and you will see that you understand something from their being. You don't understand only something from their word. We can sometimes feel that although the words are nice, what the other person is trying to give us is not that nice. So we shouldn't only stop in the material aspect of the word sense, but we should go forward into a more refined spiritual aspect of it. Something from another spiritual being is trying to communicate with us. And then we come to the sense of thought. And I give you here some examples of almost 5,000-year-old object or objects that were found in Romania, and maybe in the idea of the word sense and the sense of thought, a very nice thing to know, sort of a trivia, is that the oldest written word was found in Romania some 5,000 years ago. Some tablets made in a sort of form more with dots and dashes. And if we look at this man that is thinking, I think we can relate more and more. Don't we all get sometimes back home after a hard day's work and just put ourselves like this and think? Think about what we should do, about what we have done, or think just about ourselves. And we can see here in the second image on the right that we have two aspects of mankind. We have the aspect of the thinking man, yes. And here maybe I am wrong, but I'm sure if I am, you will tell me, and or maybe Andrew, because I know he gave us a wonderful talk about the Magi. We stay here and we think about the cosmos. And on the right, we have the different aspect of the human being who stays and receives here on Earth, what is it to receive from the cosmos? So the sense of thought can be also referred more towards a sense of concept. It is an ability that goes beyond hearing and speech. It is the ability to comprehend what someone else has said. And it helps us, it allows us to see a situation from another person's point of view. And I encourage you to go and find the cosmic thought, the series of conferences on thinking that Rudolf Steiner gave under the name of Human Thought and Cosmic Thought, which talks about the 12 thinking types of mankind. As we go through these 12 thinking types, and we relate to 12 senses, yes? If we look from each other's point of view, they are right. And we are in a time when if you look at a person objectively, you can see that in an argument, most people are right. And Rudolf Steiner says that in the future, when we will have problems, everybody in his rationalization will be right from an objective point of view, from the outside. But there's a paradox because there's only one truth. So to understand and see the truth, we have to go through all the 12 types of thinking, and then we truly get to what thinking is, and to understand what thoughts are, and to get to the truth. So this sense of thought now, it's only in its infancy, because or at least in my mind, sometimes I feel like it's like a highway. Thoughts come and they go, and you just get a glimpse of it. But when you get a glimpse of it, it's already dead. So we have to refine it. So we have to work with it and put a lid on all those thoughts that keep coming and going to truly perceive it and not just kill it so we can see it. We have to work more and more with them and bring consciousness to our sense of thought. As we think about it, digital technology does not help us. We are under an assault of thoughts. They come and they go. Today, we had here at the course a photographer to help us with our site, with our social media, and so on. And he said to us, don't do presentations longer than 10 seconds, because if a person hears more than 10 seconds on a topic, he just goes away. He does not have the attention span. He cannot concentrate that much. And then he goes forward in saying that for businesses that do not relate to education or to, let's say, cultural aspects, the attention span for thoughts is 3 seconds. So when we are using technology, we are not refining this sense of thought, and we should, because it is much easier for us to understand the outside world and ourselves and others if we have a strong sense of thought, of thinking, if we have a refined thinking. It is harder and harder for children to understand mathematical problems that needs an input from them. It is harder and harder for them, from what I'm seeing, to have problems that come from text and that do not tell them exactly what to do. They do not exercise their sense of thought. And we as adults do not exercise our sense of thought. And as we go forward, we get to the ego sense, to the feeling of the other's I being. The ego or the I. In Romanian, we usually say the I and not the ego. The ego has a lower aspect or lower understanding to it, of the lower part of our being, of our ego. The ego or the I is important in developing a strong sense of who you are as an individual. The I is the true being of ourselves. It's not only our personality, it's our individuality. Because sometimes we feel that even though rationally we say it's in my best interest to do this, something from your being says, no, this is not myself. I have to take the other way. It helps us gauge whether or not another person has integrity and if they believe in what they are saying. The first sign of the ego developing usually occurs around 3 years of age. The child will begin to refer to themselves in the first person and correctly use the word I. It is very interesting to see, I talk with kindergarten teachers, you see that this referring to themselves as I is starting to come earlier and earlier in children. And it is not something that, in my opinion now, it is good or bad. It is something that we must observe and understand why. Because as the I starts to manifest itself, other developments happen in the child, and maybe other senses are not yet ready for it, or the physical body of the child is not yet ready for the action that this I implies. And it is important here to say that by bringing technology and by bringing intellectualism in towards children today, we are obligating the forces that have to develop the body of the child to go more towards the head, because we think in the head. So by thinking more and more in the head for a child is detrimental, because if you think about it, the brain consumes most of our energy. So a child has to develop his physical body. He has to develop other organs and not the brain as such. He already has, the head is already very big compared to the rest of the body. By bringing this, we actually we obligate him to use much more energy and forces, life forces, to support this type of thinking, of intellectual thinking, that he does not need at that moment. It is very important to understand this. We are coming towards not the end, but maybe to the impact of our time on our senses. And we have here the immobilization of the eye muscle, the disintegration of sensory activity, the passive reception of information from the senses, and the introduction of an unsensory reality. What does the immobilization of the eye muscle mean? When we look towards a screen, although we perceive it as being fluent, it is actually a succession of fixed images. The eye perceives this and he stays focused and the muscles stay tense. This tension then goes towards our whole body, more so in children. And we are always asking, why are the children so agitated after using technology, after using anything with a screen? Aren't you tired after staying 1 hour at the computer? Don't you feel that tension in your whole body? But think of a child that in his willing wants always to move. You obligate him, he is obligated by this rigidness of the eye muscle to be rigid in his whole body. And when you are rigid in your whole body, what do you want to do? You want to move. You want to run. You want to relax. So a child, even more so, wants to do all of this. Then we have the disintegration of sensory activity. And I put here a small plant that has been uprooted. And I challenge you to remember, if you have ever done this, to remember what it feels like. What is the most powerful thing that you remember? And I remember always the smell. So you have touch, you have muscle contraction, you have smell, you have seeing, sight, you have hearing, you have a whole context of sensory activity. What do you have when you play soccer on a screen? You have some sort of vibrational input from the sorry, I don't know how is it the word in English right now. The joystick, and you have something that comes towards your sight and some hearing. So you have three senses, but think about this. When you look at the parsley that is freshly taken from the ground, can you say what type of green is the whole plant? The change of color is continuous. The change of smell is continuous. On a screen, you have maybe, I don't know, 20 million colors, 50 million colors. You can have an 8K TV or so on, but it is not continuous. You have a fixed amount of data that comes to you. So you are disintegrated your sensory activity. Nothing relates to what is truly there. The players are smaller than they are in reality. You move a joystick and the player moves. This is not how things work in the real world. We have a passive reception of information from the senses. And I put on the left side, let's say an application with TV shows like Netflix or, I don't know, Prime or others. And on the right, a GPS. If you think about how we use now, how we navigate now with our cars, you don't know anything about where you've been. When you went outside before the use of GPS with your car, you had to make a plan. You had to have landmarks. You had to know the city. Now you input something and the GPS tells you where to go. You're just a user, but you're not thinking. You just get an input and you work directly towards it. I would say we're becoming lazy. And Rudolf Steiner talked about this 100 years ago when he spoke about the fact that people are getting lazy in their thinking and in the future more so. And he said that they will have some kind of device that they could put in their pocket. And then they would look at the screen. He didn't say screen, he said that they would look at it and they would get information about how to do things. But not only that, they will be so lazy in their thinking that they will say, I do not want to see the whole explanation on how to do things. I want to see the exact steps that I need to do without the background so I can do it directly. When I read this some 5 or 6 years ago, I thought directly to walkthroughs that are on YouTube. You must imagine that 100 years ago, you had silent cinema. And Rudolf Steiner saw this, and we are becoming lazier, or at least I am. Sometimes I don't want to do all the work. I don't want to think all the thinking. I just go on YouTube or on Google and ask him what and how should I do this? And I don't go and read the whole article. I just look for the step that I need to do right then and there. And this is the same with GPS. We are becoming passive in this reception of information. And we do get reactive to it, and children do get reactive. And this is what it is said about computer games, that yes, they make people and children be reactive, but reaction is not creativity. And we are not creating anymore. We are just computing little things together. If we go towards the passive reception of information, I urge you to look on the left, and for sure we can see a wooden ball. And on the right, we can see a tennis ball. And we see that only with our sight. But now I can do this and show you this. This is a wooden ball that I have. Here it is. And here it's another ball. If you just look at them, you have a passive reception of information. You don't know much about them. You see them, they have different colors, and that's about it. They're balls. But this is a wooden ball, because I said so. And this is a wool ball. It gives a totally different perception. It has a different warmth. It has a different perception of sight. You have a different perception of sight when you see it. It has a different weight to it. It has a different relation to me. It even makes a different sense when I have it in my hand, a different hearing sense. And now I can also show you a tennis ball that I have. Yeah, we have all the 3 balls here. And they seem like the ones in the pictures. There's no difference. So Zoom is very good. We have a high quality feed now. But our reception, our senses can be tricked. What you are seeing on the screen in the presentation is actually made by myself with AI. So what you're seeing there has no actual materiality to it. So through technology, we do not really get a glimpse of what is real. We have to think. If we do make a powerful thinking exercise, we can see that there is something different about those balls there than the ones that I showed you in my hand. But still, in my hand, I could trick you if I wanted to. You had to use a lot of different senses so you can perceive truly what there is there. And when we come to introducing a non-sensory reality, and I put here a sort of a joke, there are garden simulators. There are simulators of trucks, cars, roller coasters. I have a friend who was playing a sort of goat simulator. I didn't understand what that was, and why would you want to do it? And thinking about all those Second Life, yeah, so Second Life was a game, yeah, where you would play your life in a game. But all these games, all this technology that we use is not truly relating to our senses. Nothing in a garden simulator has the proportions of reality. It does not have anything truly real in it. You cannot understand and you cannot relate to it as a human being. So, by introducing this unsensory reality for children, they lose their touch with what is real, with what gives them challenges, and they have a tough time overcoming challenges. And by overcoming challenges, we evolve. If we do not have challenges, we cannot go forward. And I will give this short example. If we want to move, yes, a tire or our shoes, feet, and so on, we actually need resistance. If we do not have resistance, we cannot go forward. So resistance and perception are extremely important for our development as human beings. But what can we do? Because we do not want to end on a tone that is frightening, because it shouldn't be. It is our time. We have to speak to the stars. We have to be creators. We have to create our outside world right now. And we should create it in a way that is truly an image of ourselves. It should have the thinking, the feeling, and the willing. Of course, we can use all our senses as we talked beforehand. We should play outside. We should look at things and understand their depth, to understand their colors, to observe them, to give ourselves time to observe both our inner perceptions and our outer perceptions. And I think we should play more. As adults, we should learn to play again. And I do have here from our course today, and I invite you to do an exercise for perception. I do have some flowers. Yes, they are cut, so they are towards their end of life. But for understanding better our senses, I do invite you, for our sense of eye, for example, to look at the plant and observe it. See what arises in you. Then, if you have the opportunity to look at an animal, maybe you have a small pet or a big pet, a big dog, or sheep, and observe them. And then, if you have the opportunity, meet your neighbor and observe them, speak with them, see what arises in your perception. The key to to counterbalancing is to use our senses, to use our perceptions, to train them, to refine them, to see the beauty, the truth, and the goodness in the outside world and in ourselves, to do eurythmy, to know our bodies, to understand the etheric. I thank you very much for your patience. I know it was a bit long, and I do wait for your questions. I am very happy to answer as much as I can.
Thank you, Aleodor. That was very intense, very thorough. And as you said, we can take some questions. We will stay on for about 20 more minutes if we have questions all the way to that end. Usually, uh, these always end within 2 hours, sometimes a little less than that, but they've been thoroughly intense, these last few webinars, and we've used up just about 2 hours every time with the questions and answers. So on the bottom of your window, there is a thing that says raise hand. If you click that, I can see that you would like to ask a question. And I also have one. I answered one earlier. Each of the cultural ages is 2,160 years long, and the current cultural age began in 1413. So if you add 2160 to that, you get to what, 3573 or something, and you can keep adding 2160 to get to each of the successive cultural ages. We have a question. Who was the painter who drew your risen Christ picture?
So I'll write it. I'll write his name in the chat if that's okay. So I have my laptop here on
Yep.
the left. Sorry for going like this. His name is Arsenie Boca. He was a priest. He was a priest, and I know that he did know about anthroposophy in his days. So I know for a fact. But he was an Orthodox priest.
Another question. They wanted to get this right. Of the senses the five senses that we extract from the external world, something, um, uh, are they all translated by the physical body, or are any direct to our comprehension, to our consciousness?
From what I researched, they are all translated right now because we do relate more to our physical thinking. As we refine it and we start and go towards and working towards an imagination-like thinking, they will start and have a direct, let's say, link to it. So if we talk about the etheric brain, yeah, that works towards our physical brain, if we refine them and we go towards a different, let's say, higher evolution and perception, we get a direct input towards it. But that is more towards the, let's say, inspiration stage. We are working towards the imagination stage right now.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so this question says, I'm curious about losing part of one's senses. How did they come back? Oh, so if you have lost a sense of hearing or something, sight, is it possible to get them back? What can you
Well,
say?
I can give an example from myself, or if that is good.
Balance.
So last year, in this problem that I had with my hearing and my balance, I lost about 25 decibels of capacity in my left ear. And I did get them back, but it was a lot of physical work, a lot of thinking work. And I would say eurythmy helped me very much in those times. So as I went forward, I did a lot of eurythmy and I could, let's say, balance my hearing. I still lost 5 decibels, but with work, both artistic and physical, I did get them back.
Good. Um, I'm trying to get it for you right now. Somebody asked about um, the lecture from August 8th, 1920 on the 12 senses, and I'm looking here on RS
Yes.
Archive, and there are two, one from the development of eurythmy and one from social science as a foundation for social forms.
It's the one with social sciences. The other one is earlier. It's an earlier conference,
Okay, so
an earlier lecture.
I will put that in the chat for you folks that would like it. Um, and here, whoops, oh, gotta change that back to everyone. And Control V. Okay, so there you have a link to that lecture on the 12 senses.
Should I
Uh,
stop my sharing, my screen sharing? Is that okay?
you're you can still share. Yes, it's okay. Doesn't get in the way for the chat. Um,
Perfect.
and let's see if I got somebody else here.
A
Okay, I
good
think that takes care of all the questions.
a good book that is also very helpful in understanding how children let's say, interact with their senses and with the world is a book by Helle Heckman. She is a Danish, I think I'm pronouncing it right,
Danish.
Danish kindergarten teacher. I know that she came in the USA for some for some kindergartens, and she worked in more states than one, but I don't remember all of them. She has one book that is very easy to go through as a parent or even as a teacher. It's for a teacher, it's even easier. It's in the garden, to play in the garden, in the garden play, or I don't know exactly how the translation. I had it from German, and her series of books on the 5 keys are also very good on the sensory explanation and the interaction between the senses in children.
Wow.
I did put up the painter's name. His name is Arsenie Boca. He was a priest. I saw in the chat question.
Right. Okay. Well, this was outstanding. Thank you. There's a lot of thank yous here listed, Aleodor. And I also want to express my sincere appreciation. It's a lot of work to put in what you put in to present this. I know. Let me just remind all those that are still here that our next webinar will be May 18th, and we will have Donna Lepre. She will speak about plants and dynamics for home gardening. That will be at 2 o'clock on the 18th of May. And also what she might be touching, I'm not sure. I'm guessing right now because she does a lot of preparations that she makes for healing purposes from the plants. So she'll probably be touching some on that as well for home gardeners, things that you can grow. So 2 o'clock on the 18th of May, Donna Lepre. Aleodor, again, thank you. I hope I do get to uh, fly to Bucharest one of these days in the future. And I sincerely applaud all the work that you're doing there. It's quite thrilling to hear from others who've been there about the amazing work going on in Bucharest. And it's a great inspiration to all the rest of us who try to get our branches to be lively places as well. So thank you for all you're doing.
I thank you very much, and I thank you all the participants and for their interactive and activity in the chat and in the question sections. I look forward to meeting you again in Bucharest and to go forward with our work in all the anthroposophical branches and in the technology aspect.
Okay,
Look
well,
forward to everything.
yes. So thank you again, and hopefully we'll see most of you in May. And Aliorta, have a good night. I know it's just about midnight your time, right?
Just about midnight, exactly. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.